this is ARCH620. It's pro practice in the MARC program for Ball State. And we're at Cap Indy, so we're not up in Muncie. We're in sort of downtown Indianapolis, or just east of downtown. And one of the things that we're doing this semester as a project is basically it's kind of a Shark Tank thing. Everybody is charged with either teaming up, going on their own, or lobbying the whole class to do a project together to come up with a business idea. And it could be a firm, it could be an app, it could be some consulting model, it could be anything, but basically go through the process of imagining a business. You know, what is it? What's your purpose? Who's it for? All of these things, and at the final exam essentially will be a pitch to a group of equity people, CV people that I bring in, and so it'll be their own Shark Tank.
Awesome. That's a very fun idea.
Well, I think so.
Okay, I'm on now.
All right. Hi, Mike.
Jeff, how are you?
Good. My mask. Okay, well, why don't we get started, and you guys want to make your introductions?
So this is Cara Weber in the upper left-hand corner up there with DELV Design. She is a partner and one of the co-founders, and it's an architectural design studio, architects, designers, and brand strategists. And their vision statement is to create a world with more compelling stories. I watched Cara and Sam Bondero. They did a keynote with Indie Design Week 2020 at that conference on empathy, and I thought that was great, and that's why I wanted to bring them in today.
And this is Mike Parnon with BrandPoint Design. He's a principal architect from Wisconsin. So I've actually worked with him on a couple projects recently. But he focuses a lot on branding, architecture, and actually partners up with like a large group of architects and engineers and custom millwork fabricators to create a full-service design service for specifically for banks all throughout the U.S.
And one of the things that I think is really interesting about this, so Mike and Cara, what I have done is I have charged the students in teams throughout the rest of the semester with coming up with the speakers. So we have speaker or a group of speakers every week. And so our team today said, hey, Darwin said, there's this guy, Mike. And I went, what is that name? Oh, that's Mike. I know Mike, he's up in Wisconsin. And Nicholas says, how about Cara? And I said, hey, I know Cara. But what's really interesting about this is they chose the two of you separately. So you see hands and no faces. They chose the two of you separately, but you actually have somewhat similar approaches in that you combine a lot of different service ideas to bring pretty unique value to your clients. It's not what I would call the traditional approach to providing service to your clients. There's something more there. And so I thought, by happy happenstance or what's the word I want? Coincidence that they came up with the two of you as their ideas. But so I'm excited for this conversation today. So you guys have questions you want to start with?
Sure. Okay. First question is, obviously, so both firms are definitely full service type design firms where you do a lot more than just architecture. How and why have you positioned your firm structure to do full design as opposed to just architecture?
Mike, you want to start off with that? Did you hear that okay?
Sure, I wasn't sure. Yeah, I hear you great. I'm going to start with an old comic strip that's going to date me quite a bit. You probably have never seen it, but back in the days when banks, and I don't just do banks, but it's 97%. Back in the days of banking, the old days, they had bars in front of the transaction window, which they used to call the teller. And the comic strip shows the quote teller standing at the window looking behind the bars. The customer comes up and the customer has a toaster. And the customer says to the teller, "Hey, can you fix my toaster?" And the banker said, "What are you talking about? I'm a bank. We're not a hardware store." He said, "Well," and again, this is about 25 years ago, so you have to put inflation in front of it. He said, "Well, when I put my $50,000 in your bank, you gave me a toaster." So the last cell in the comic is, "It'll be ready on Tuesday." The point of that comic strip for me is that when I immersed myself into a niche area of design, I didn't want my client to have to turn to anybody else. I found a way to learn. I was trained in branding already, but I found a way to be the mensch. And this positions you in your business, whatever that business may be, in a very strong position of strength, because what typically happens is the general contractor will steamroll over you. And Darwin can tell you about that another time. So find a way to be their answer for everything. That's the basics of it.
Interesting. Cara, what do you think?
Yeah, I like the question and kind of to the crux of remembering how we got where we are in the first place. I would say that DELV was founded in 2014, and we founded ourselves on kind of the idea of being relentlessly curious. And so by nature, that's going to push us outside of traditional architecture services. Beyond that, when we first started, we kind of had a threefold business model. That one of the sort of nodes of the triangle of our business model, and we won an international business model competition in the first year that we started our firm. So that was a real kickstart to kind of test our model and then hit the ground running with what we were able to do. So one of the legs of this triangle we called DELV Lab, and I think the heart of it is that when you hire really smart, really creative people and you want to keep them excited and engaged, oftentimes those people's mind wander in sometimes very helpful ways and sometimes just wandering sorts of ways. So we wanted to find a way to kind of capture that and say, like, it's really great that your mind has these wild ideas that are on the periphery of what we do. Let's give you a place, basically a playground to test and explore and capture some of that. So it's been a lot of fun, and there's a lot of spin-off ideas that have kind of come out of that and will likely in the future as well.
Who's got the next question? You want to come closer?
Off camera here. Okay, so playing on that with the forward-thinking model, does that forward-thinking model build relationships earlier than the traditional model would, and that's relationships with clients? Cara, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, it does. I think for two different reasons. One is because we're starting to have, be known in the industry, especially the local industry, by clients who want to talk to us early and kind of get the feelers out of what we're all about early and what could. We're also a firm that's very much steeped in design thinking methodologies. So we bring that to our clients, and a lot of times it's long before they ever have a building project or a physical need. They need to think about their culture and their branding and why something feels off and why is that. So they have started to kind of ask for our involvement early on, and in what we would consider pre-design services, which are now quite robust, what we offer. So yeah, we've been able to do that. And then the down the line, sort of when a physical project, a building project, construction project becomes a need or becomes more defined, we're able to jump in there and give them serve as well in that line.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. We look at ourselves as, well, branders, but probably more so strategists. The strategy almost trumps the architecture, and not really, but in getting involved at the pre-design phase, as Cara mentioned, and looking at the culture of the brand, but also the strategy and understanding the customer needs more than, design is just a pretty picture or a nice looking building or whatever. So as being part of their business plan and understanding how they operate, you get a deeper connection with them, and hopefully you get a deeper connection to design, because a lot of what I do is, before the design ever happens, is establishing what their brand and their culture is as it relates to expansion, and building, and how the environment serves the consumer. So they're all related. Ultimately, all these things are related holistically. From strategy and market analysis and all this other stuff, demographic analysis, down to the building or remodel, whatever. It's all integrated, but the architect, and I never liked the term, the sort of Renaissance person, master planner from ages ago. This is not a master planner, it's a master strategist. And so that enables you to get closer to what they really are, and not just, we're going to hire a designer to put the drapes on the windows, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Okay. As far as the idea of design thinking, how do you say your process actually encourages a more holistic design overall?
I think that, and I'll kind of jump to a degree off of what Mike said as well. There's a great, as architects, like, you get trained in design thinking even before design thinking was sort of a very popular term that is spread throughout many different industries now, and is design thinking is the root of a design education, whether those words are used or not. So I feel like we have a great privilege and responsibility to, when we interface with clients or potential clients, to educate them about design thinking. And it's really fun to watch a client who has never, maybe procured architecture services before, or never interacted in a design sense, to really get to be co-creators in understanding what the future could be. So we really want design to be invitational, and it's not, we're secret. The Matt or whatever, who's the Wizard of Oz guy? The guy behind the curtain. I can't remember. It's the Wizard. Yeah, it's the Wizard. Gosh, should have known that. We're not hidden behind a curtain, and then we kind of reveal the magical design at the end. Like, getting a client to understand design thinking, and that they truly feel full ownership over the crafting of what the solution ends up being. It's a more elegant solution in the end. They have more ownership of it. And, back to kind of our mission of creating more compelling stories, we want, even after people engage with us, we want them to go out and be design thinkers in many different ways, and whatever it is that they do. So making sure that's a transferable skill is something that we also get really excited about.
I agree with Cara. I think you're right on. We do the same thing. I would start by getting a roll of tracing paper, the cheap yellow roll or white roll of tracing paper. And that's not necessarily old school thinking here. I'm not saying you can't use a computer or a laptop or whatever. I use those all the time, of course, but along the lines of what Cara was just describing to you about the engagement, when you sit down with your customer, with your client, and you bring them into the design process, I find one of the most rewarding moments, and it usually happens with a little bit of trace. There's not as much trace as there used to be. You get a bunch of pens on the table, you sit down with your client, the pens are all thick, you can't do anything detailed by design, and you start to sketch, and then you get them to where they're sketching too. So now you have this tactile connection between ideas, and it's just it's playtime, I know, but they start to sketch, and now they are part of the design team, and that's that holistic team effort. I always look at architecture in a lot of ways as ghostwriting. You pick a person that wants something done. They have a problem to solve, and you as the professional are brought in as part of the team with the owner. And this is analogous to being the ghostwriter on writing somebody else's story. So you have the skills to design it for them, and they, as the customer, has the thought of where they want to go with it. And so the ghostwriter writes the story, but it's not their story, the writer. So that it's the merging of the two. So I think of the same thing, sitting on the table, you're merging the ideas of of your customer, your client, with your ideas and expertise as an architect.
Thank you. Back to, let's see, talking about competition, what makes your firm stand out from the competition? And do you see yours have a direct competitor in your area? Mike, would you want to start with that?
Well, I'll start, sure. I position myself, I believe that in a lot of ways, what I do, selling a big idea through my collective expertise, it's kind of like, it's analogous to being a stand-up comedian. And the best stand-up comedians, it's the point of view from them that is extended to the audience. And so I have a unique path. We all have a unique path that we take. And the idea is to exploit, and maybe not the right term, but to exploit your personal experience thumbprint. And for me, my business is set up. I worked for 2 very large design build firms, and this is just a sidebar, Jeff. Don't work for a design build firm. It's a devil's work, but that's another story. Any case, when I started my own company many years ago, I went to the model of you get me. That was one of my angles. You don't get an associate. Now, that's not for every client. That's not for every architect, but that's the way I approached it. And I sold my unique path to my client. And again, back to the previous questions, a lot of it is about making that connection with that. I'm going to get to know you, and you're going to be part of the team. It's not just, you're hiring me to do the work. I think it's individual, though. You've got to find your own point of view. And it took me 6 years out of my master's in architecture to get to that point, just so you know. Don't be depressed, though. That's not a bad thing.
Thank you. And Cara?
I want to make sure I answer the question right. Would you mind repeating it one more time?
Sure. What makes your firm stand out from the competition? And do you have a large competitor that you see yourself competing against, or are you alone in the field?
I would say we're not alone in the field, but I think as a collection of what we offer, we're alone in the field. I think we compete in certain sects of what we do. Within Indianapolis, there's also sort of several firms nationally that we rub shoulders with and enjoy a good competition and emulation. I mean, there's a lot of firms and different models that we look up to quite a bit. So, and then as far as like a differentiator, when we named ourselves DELV Design, that was I started it with 3 other partners in 2014, and we had gotten to a place in our career, 10 plus years in a career in big and small firms around the area in the country. and had kind of decided that there was something that felt like was missing for us in all the firms that we looked at. And that was kind of there was a heartbeat. There's a book and a lot of sentiment around start with why and keep why at the center of your culture. And I think we built our firm around that, and that sort of exudes and permeates into our messaging. It permeates into how we offer services to clients, as well as how we attract employees, and the culture. That culture is phenomenally important to us. We protect it very tightly. So I think that has become what was foundational at the beginning, instead of kind of slipping away from us, has actually become even more rooted and more tested and proven as it's who we are, it's what we offer. And we find that the clients that really resonate with that, they resonate very strongly with it. And so we've been able to get some really phenomenal commissions and hold on to some really great relationships through that.
Excellent, thank you.
So next question. Obviously, so both of your firms are very specific, and in the sense that you offer a lot of services. How do clients tend to find out about you as full firms? Mike, you can begin.
Okay, sure. Jarwin, are these all your questions, or are you sharing with the group?
Oh, sharing with Nicola.
I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm a firm believer that design is design. There are, of course, and I worked for a couple of them because the design build firms had niche businesses. But if you're a hospital architect, then you go to hospital events, you immerse yourself in that specific market. I am almost, because I like it so much, I picked the model. The model didn't pick me. As Darwin said, I'm almost exclusively financial facility design and analysis and branding. So I do all that for my bank clients. So I just enjoy the building type. I'm doing a church right now, remodel of a church. It's mostly through word of mouth for me, but my core business is you learn everything about that market, and this is the part in architecture. I have a degree in fine art too, so I'm even more challenged than probably most. One of the biggest challenges you face is the right brain, left brain hemisphere battle between the business side of architecture and the art side. So architecture is really art and science combined. But when you have a firm like mine, which is a small firm that does some fairly big projects through outsourcing, I'm battling my right and left brain all the time, and it's difficult. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because you have to be, on the one hand, a creative designer to serve that need of your client, and the other, you have to be a very good researcher, and you have to be an outreach. You can't be a wallflower. Now, some firms, especially the old days, they used to have couples where it'd be two people, partners that would run the firm. One partner would assume the design lead, the other would assume the business lead, and that worked out fine. They could kind of control their hemispheres of their brain. And so, in my case, the outreach is I do a lot of conventions where I'm out there. I have to advertise a little bit. I'm out there in front of a niche audience, bankers. And in your case, whether you're a multi project type or not, you have to know your audience, right? Back to the comedy reference analogy. You got to know your audience. So they're not going to come to you. You have to come to them. All the other stuff, web, email, it's all fine and good. You have to have it. It's sort of what they call the price of entry, right? So that's automatic. But the special sauce is you reaching out to that market and learning about who's out there. And this I'll wrap with this. Branding is largely about finding the right fit between two elements. All right, I have a brand. Is my brand pure enough? If you look at, the classic is Walmart. Love it or hate it. It's the basic tenet of, you save money, you do better in your life. that's a very clear brand. And so they know their target. So in other words, they're not going after Wall Street to be their client. Well, the same thing applies to you as the architect. You're not going to win a ton of customers through email blasts. It just does not. It doesn't work. You have to get out there and say, hey, I'm what they call, you know, I'm an expert in my field, and you and I connect because of these reasons. You being the client. That's the essence of it for me.
Yeah, I would say on if we're talking to a degree about marketing strategy, I think one thing that we have had the fortune of, well, I should say the fortune and the danger is that we have not had to do hardly any marketing ourselves. It has been the largest way that we've gotten business has been through relationships and referrals. And so the power of that cannot be undersold. That being said, however, those may bring in work and cash flow, but are those the projects that, are sort of your own aspirational projects? Just because it comes to you doesn't mean it's necessarily the right fit or that it's the right project that you want to spend yours and your firm's time on. So there's kind of two ways I would say that we've approached that. One is that we kind of craft what may be a value, whether it's a small kind of concept on design thinking, or we do a lot of what we call experience maps, a value to a client. Sometimes we can send them, we have white papers, or if you drop a nugget of value into a client that you're really after, you can sell to them quite a bit, but until they see a value and appreciate that and say, oh, we are a good fit, then it'll be a really difficult sell. Another piece of advice and that we kind of follow pretty closely is that our marketing strategy is not, we do a very wide breadth of project types. We specifically don't focus on one project type. But what we do focus is on a client type, a client who has a certain, a buyer who has a certain persona, and we kind of study the different personas that we may want to attract and what they're looking for. So we build our marketing strategy and what messaging we push out, and understand that it's going to be a dog whistle. So not everyone's going to hear it, but the people who do hear it are going to hear it so in tune that they're going to say, that's my firm. That's exactly who I want to work with. They get what I need.
Perfect. Thank you. The last question we have curated is of course, with the backdrop of 2020 and COVID-19, how have you seen the industry change and where do you see it going moving forward? Cara, if you could take the lead on this.
Yeah, what a year. The industry, so we have also, thankfully, and I know many industries that cannot say the same, and not even every firm, but we've thankfully been, in fact, busier than ever. We've hired 3 people during COVID. So that's not the experience across the board, I wouldn't say, but certainly a portion. I think that the industry is having a really exciting moment right now because we're really being stress tested in a way that, okay, what is the power of space? What do buildings mean? How do we design them to be adaptable? Yes, we're having a pandemic now. It will end or recede at some point. And then there's questions, if you read or study or look at futurists, there's a lot of really interesting thought about if, I hate to mention this right now, but when there's a next pandemic, what have we learned from this? How will we position more flexibly in the future? And how can our industry as designers of physical spaces and design thinkers help position ourselves and our communities for that? I would say we as well play not only at a building scale, but we also do urban planning scale. So we've been talking with some municipalities recently about how they are engaging public in the future in this new COVID reality. So in summary, I think that there's a lot of physical implications, but I think that this is just an amazing time for designers and design thinking. The value of it couldn't be greater right now, because we're all faced with this very divergent opportunity here in how we go forward. So it's exciting. It's still definitely fuzzy. Nothing's in focus quite yet.
Thank you. And Mike?
Okay, well, two sides of this question. One is, how do you deal with your clients during this period? And then how do your buildings respond? And for me, the eye-opening, one of the first eye-opening events for me was the initial shutting down. You know, there's been all the futuristic talk about, oh, in the future, we'll all be living in a virtual world. We won't touch anybody. We'll, be in this cave, and it's going to be like Tom Cruise in Minority Report. You should watch that if you haven't seen it, where everything's virtual. Nobody touches anybody, and you don't need to leave your space. The Amazon truck shows up. But what happened is, especially your generation and the millennial generation, they are people. They like to be around people. They like to be in teams. They like to, in person get together. And Zoom is nice. We're doing it now, but it does not replace the social need to interact physically with people. And you can do that. Maybe it is all 6 feet away. I've done plenty of it 6 feet away. I don't like the mask so much, but there's a way to do it. As Cara is alluding to, it just all it does is stretch your creativity, and that's a good thing. Like you said, a challenge is a good thing. As far as just the other side of it, dealing with clients, I've been initially clients did not want to meet. Their HR or their security risk manager said, no, we don't want any live meetings, so we're not going to do it with anybody. But that's softened up over time, and I find I have a client in Florida. I'm in the Midwest, and a Midwestern bank recommended me to a Florida bank. Darn actually worked on it a little bit, and I have three projects over there. We started with a Zoom conference call. That was our first meeting, and they were very unsure. I showed them some of my work. We talked. They liked some of the things I said, and then I went to see them, and I got the job. And that's been the case with almost everything I've done. So for me personally, I want to be in front of the client. I want to find a way to do it. So that's just my personal angle to it. Nothing beats the live interaction, especially when you're dealing with people's dreams and goals and all that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you both. Are there any questions that other students have?
Anyone? Bueller? It's another movie you should watch. Classic. It's a classic. No other questions?
Well, I have a question for the group
Go ahead.
in general. I talked earlier about using a pen. I know obviously everybody's on computers. Everybody in the professions are on computers. Do any of you, all of you, still sketch, or are you sketching at all in addition to using the computer?
Yes.
Show of hands, who's sketching?
Everybody is? Okay, almost. I think I go back to Minority Report because Tom Cruise is in front of the virtual screen, just standing in space. And he's got his hand up and he's moving things around. I think there's a day's going to come where that's where you're going to be into a virtual design, where you're going to be in a room with your client and you're actually going to be building it virtually. But we're not there yet. And the sketch component for me, and again, I'm telling you in terms of the bridge between being a student and getting into the real world. To me, it's multimedia. That's where I think it's all at. Multimedia, video, PowerPoint, sketch, virtual, all of it together. But keep that sketch part of it. It gives it that human side. It's just my opinion.
Any questions? No? All right. Well, Cara and Mike, I appreciate you doing this with us. I appreciate the conversation and sharing everything that you have. And great to reconnect with both of you, as virtual as it is. So we're going to let you go, but best of luck and stay well where you are. And Mike, we'll talk about brains again here sometime soon.
Yeah, no, I owe you, I lost it. I can resketch it, but I lost the original. I apologize. That's why I hadn't sent it to you.
No worries. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
You know,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah,
We appreciate it.
it's fun.
All right. Big takeaways. What do you got?
For me, one of them was the part of full ownership of the design thinking process and how to interact with the client and make it part of the design thinking.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Mike's comment about the tactile connection.
Right.
Thought that was great. What else?
One that I had was find a way to be their answer to everything, I think is what Mike said. So it's kind of like a challenging thing to think about, but I guess it kind of, for me, I was kind of tying it into like, what's your purpose, who's your client, and we kind of try to start figuring those things out so that you can figure out how to be their everything. So it's like a relationship, I feel like. So.
That's really interesting. If you've ever heard, there's this marketing guru guy named Seth Godin. I don't remember the book. He's got a lot of books, but in one of them in particular, he talks about becoming indispensable. When there's a lot of architects, they'll say, well, you know, having trouble, people don't see the value in architects and et cetera, et cetera. If you become indispensable, like they were describing, if you're indispensable, there's sort of infinite value there, right? So I think that's a good one. Any big takeaway?
I was interested in when they were discussing about marketing and trying to find clients. The issue of how do they project like their value as their firm out so that the people who find that actually valuable like see that and they get the clients they want and their clients get the architect that they want.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a really important concept because every architect needs to understand that they're not the architect for every client. And not every client is the right client for them. There's got to be that match that you're talking about. And Cara used the term dog whistle, which is one of the first times I've heard dog whistle used in a positive sense lately. But I think it's right on. And I think your point is right on as well, is you've got to find that right match, you know, client and architect. Any other big takeaways?
I think something that Cara mentioned at the end was even though there's a lot of negative about COVID-19, like all the opportunities for people like us that are design thinkers and have creative kind of perspectives on things and spaces, mainly. I guess that's one of the positive things.
Yeah.
The amount of work that they're having.
Yeah. It's really important to understand that out of crisis comes opportunity, and it can be sort of sort of a morbid thought or a sick thought in a way, but if we look at, and I think the way Mike said it was that challenges your creativity or something like that. I think that is a great opportunity for people like you. It'll just drive the creativity further. And again, you know, I think we talked about this maybe in the first session, 2008, 2009 with that recession. Think about the companies that came out of that. They saw new opportunities that were created by that collapse. And some of the highest valued companies on the face of the earth right now came out of that crisis back then. So that's a good point. Any other big takeaways?